Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our JobX seminar today regarding entrepreneurial ambition. My name is Jodie Glass, and I'm very proudly the Executive Director and Producer for State Theatre Company, and I'm also a board member for the Economic Development Board. Welcome today. Apologies for the delay. As you can see, we have some very popular panellists. It is a great pleasure for me to be here with you today. I'm going to first acknowledge that we meet on the lands of the Kaurna people and pay tribute to and our respects to elders past, present and future. I am delighted to be sitting here with you, but more importantly, with these incredible panellists who are today going to be talking to you about entrepreneurial ambition and what it takes in the job that they do to become a success and how they define their success, the things that they've learned and where they hope to head next. Now, I'm sure for you, they don't need much introduction, but I'm going to do that anyway. To my left, the most gorgeous, fabulous designer for Paolo Sebastian, Paul Vasilev. The equally gorgeous Daniels Langerberg, who is the founder of EcoCaddy and also of a new co-working space, Marche. And finally, the beautiful Janine Allis, who is the founder of Boost Juice and now the star of Shark Tank, the most incredible TV show that's riveting to watch. Can you please thank her? So the panel today, it's all about them and, of course, all about you. So what I would like to do is invite, or I'll introduce each person just with a little bit of their biographical background, and then I'm going to start asking them some questions. And towards the end of the session, I'd like to open it up to the floor and hope that you've got some questions that you'd like to direct to the panellists as well. They have fascinating stories, where they started, where they are, and where they hope to be. I'm sure changes daily, but maybe they've got some fixed ideas, and this is what we'll learn from them today. First of all, Paul. What a designer. Paul has just been filling me in on his career. He's an incredibly young and successful designer, but what's fascinating is that he's always known that's what he wanted to be. He was designing his own brand logo at the age of, I'm not sure what age you were, but in year 14. Incredible. Writing a business plan when he was 17 in year 12, and now is the first Australian designer as a couture designer to showcase in Paris during Couture Week. This is an incredible achievement, and he's just 27. Paul's label, Paolo Sebastian, is just 10 years old and has had incredible success, and we'll get to hear a little bit more about him. Daniels has had a fascinating career too as an urban planner, and he branched into solving some environmental challenges, I suppose, is one way of describing it, by launching EcoCaddy. And EcoCaddy is, if we have an image of an EcoCaddy, you may have seen them around the streets of Adelaide. It started as a way of solving low emissions movement of humans, and now has moved into experiences. So that's an interesting pathway there. And Daniels was reflecting on what he had hoped he'd had at the time he started his business, having a co-working space. And so, having learnt from his own experience, he's now set up this fabulous co-working space because he's had a very supportive and enthusiastic landlord. And then finally, Janine, our wonderful entrepreneur who I think is such an incredible example to every one of us. Janine is the founder of Boost Juice, and I can't wait to hear more about the inspiration for starting Boost Juice. But her journey, I think it's 17 years, Boost Juice. 17 years, the journey from that to the global empire it is now, and now giving her freedom to become an entrepreneur through investments in other businesses and taking interesting steps, having had that experience and foundation from those years of running a business from a very small thing to, I think you're in 40 countries now. 14. Yeah. Incredible, incredible. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to start with some fairly, let's say straightforward questions about who they are and where they've come from, and then we'll move more into specifics about what they're doing. So Paul, I know I've touched on your CV, but maybe you can just quickly tell us a little bit about how you started. And there's a video that we can have just playing in the background so you can see a little bit of his work.
Sure. Well, I mean, I started powerless fashion, as you mentioned, 10 years ago when I was 17, in my parents' lounge room at home. It's something that I had always wanted to do. I mean, from the age of 3, I was making dresses out of wrapping paper and newspaper for friends. And then eventually grabbing bits of spare wood in Dad's shed and making mannequins and things. And then when I was around 11, there was a dress that my best friend and I saw in a magazine, and I said, well, why don't we try making it? So with the help of my nonna, I started out making this dress, and it turned out pretty good for an 11-year-old. And then another friend saw it, they wanted one, and then another friend wanted one, and so I began making these dresses for friends, and I wasn't charging anyone, it was just something that I loved doing. And so at around age 13, I was making all my friends who were a little bit older than me, their school formal dresses. Wow. And so thankfully, I've had my family and my parents are so supportive of me, and they put me through art classes and sewing lessons, and Mum found a lady named Jenny Torelli who was willing to mentor me, so I would do a couple of days a week after school. I would go catch the bus to this lady's house, and I would do sewing and pattern making and drafting classes. So, and then when I was 14, I said, you know, I really am serious about pursuing this. And then when I was in year 12 at Christian Brothers College, and one of my lecturers came to me and said, look, there's a subject, we were picking our subjects for year 12, there's a subject that you can do which is called extension studies, and you've been talking about having this fashion show for so many years now, why don't you do it? So I set out to have this show and to launch the label, and I thought we'll be lucky if we maybe get 100 people rock up to this thing. And we had 660 people, sold out show, we raised money for Canteen, we had a full page in the newspaper the next day in the Advertiser, and Powerless Fashion was born, and I was getting orders for wedding dresses and all sorts of things, and I was only halfway through year 12, so so I was, you know, working until 3 a.m. in the morning, and then getting up at 7 a.m. to catch the bus, and then doing it all over again every day. And yeah, it's grown from there, and I've been incredibly lucky to, because also, you know, when I started, I said, you know, I want to be an haute couture designer, and for those of you who don't know, haute couture is like, I guess, the highest level of fashion. So currently there's only 13 houses that are certified in haute couture, so that's your Dior, Chanel, Valentino, all those brands. And I said, that's what I want to do, and but I want to maintain production in South Australia, and I want to be based in Australia because this is my home and I love it. And everyone looked at me and said, that's probably not going to happen for you. So that was, you know, as a young kid, that was really hard to be told that you're going to have to up and move your whole life from your family that you love. And then I was given an opportunity to study in Milan when I was 19. And it was the most wonderful but hardest experiences of my life, and I absolutely hated it for the first couple of months. But it kind of put everything into perspective for me, and I kind of thought, you know, there's some great opportunities here, but if I'm going to do this, I want to do it from my hometown, and I'll just get as far as I can with it, because at the end of the day, I just love what I'm doing. I don't care how far I get with it. But fortunately, it has worked out for us. We were the first, as you mentioned, Australian-based couture brand to showcase during Paris Couture Fashion Week, and we've now been certified by the Asian Couture Federation, and now looking to be certified by the Chambre Syndicale as an haute couture brand. So that's a process that we are, a very long process that will take quite a number of years, but getting there slowly, hopefully.
So that's a fascinating story, because there are some themes that I think are going to come out from each of our panellists about their ambitions and their vision about what they wanted to be and some of the steps that they've taken. So we're going to pick up some of those themes. Perhaps I can ask Daniels now to talk about where he came from and how he came to be where he is right now.
I'll try and give you the short answer, because it's otherwise we'll be here all day. But yeah, I started doing urban planning, urban design in Shanghai, living in China for about 3 years, and I saw some amazing things, and also saw some pretty dreadful things, particularly with the environment, the rate of growth, and how unsustainable it was. What I saw that was great was, fortunately enough, I was exposed to entrepreneurialism in a pretty organic way, in that my housemate started a bicycle building company called Factory 5. And at the time that I was living in Shanghai, it was a very small period of time, but the Chinese, particularly the middle class kids, were saying no to cars and actually buying up these really nice Italian frames and really nice bikes. And so they sort of leveraged off of that. And I saw this movement and I became infatuated with it. And I was like, wow, how are they doing this? They seem to be having so much fun. They're just with mates. They're building a company. And I came back to Adelaide and I actually saw some amazing things happening in Adelaide, you know, Samri and all these things going up. And I saw my mates digging in, starting up their own architecture design firms, trying to change the city and make it better. And I said to myself, I want to be a part of that. And when I was in Shanghai, I was fortunate to actually work with the company that invented the tricycle that you see behind us. It's an electric-assisted pedicab. And I would say it's probably the most efficient way to get around a city, particularly denser cities like Shanghai, but also in Adelaide, obviously. We've been here for 2.5 years now and moved about 40,000 people. And it's a really fun way to move people. And that was the thing that sort of really got me into starting EcoCaddy, was that I wanted to do something that I was passionate about. I was passionate about cycling. I was racing fixed gear bikes. I was actually winning a few races over there, and I was part of this pretty cool culture that started organically with a bunch of kids starting races. And by the time I left to come back to Adelaide, was getting sponsored by Nike and Red Bull, and it just took off. But there was that movement again. And so I suppose cycling, changing cities, making them better. The reason I got into urban design was because I love SimCity and I played that as a kid. I played that a lot and I'm like, what? I can do this for a job? So I ended up getting into urban planning there, but then I got really, I really love the theory side of it and how we can make cities better, how we can plan cities better, how we can make places that are significant to people, how can we make them more efficient, and obviously how we can make them more sustainable. And that sustainability aspect is really closely underpinned by how we move around a city. So transport's integral. So I suppose it was those things coming together and an opportunity when I came back to Adelaide to stay a little bit longer, which I think was my twin sister. She had sort of conspired to keep me here. And I said, look, I've got an idea to start this company. And she said, you know, what do you need? I'm like, I need shelter, so I need a place to sleep, and I need a MacBook Pro so I can design my business. She gave me a MacBook Pro, she gave me a couch, and I didn't have to pay any board. So I built EcoCaddy off of that couch. I didn't realise, I thought it was going to be a couple of weeks. I slept on that couch for 12 months. And I've still got her MacBook Pro, so she's a great sister. But yeah, and I also had her housemate he'd been in a solar business for 5 years, and I was constantly badgering him for questions. You know, how do I do this? How do I do that? I had a thousand ideas, and he was the one that brought me to looking at the finances and looking at the spreadsheets and this thing called business acumen, and then I started. That
thing called business acumen.
Yeah, that thing. Yeah. So I sort of I jumped into it sort of head first and quite naively, but I think that was a blessing. But what I did was quickly realise that that I didn't have the skills that I needed at that moment. So I started researching, and thank God we've got the internet, YouTube, and Shark Tank. I was watching Shark Tank as well.
I'm there for you.
Yeah, I was watching a lot of Shark Tank, and I realised I was pitching at my old job as an urban designer. I was pitching to win competitions, design competitions. So that was sort of a critical aspect for me. I suppose becoming a successful entrepreneur, because I had to pitch for some funding. Yep. So got that funding. And there's a funny story, which I'll give you the abbreviated version, but it came in two little steps. Well, one small one and then a big one. The small one was I convinced our state government to actually back me to get 2 trikes down here for VeloCity, which was a cycling conference, and I knew I had to be a part of that because all of the best cyclists and all of the best policymakers and people in the industry were coming from all around the world to be there. And I wanted to get in front of them to validate my idea. So I convinced them to get 2 trikes down here, and it was when I started riding those bikes around that the magic started to happen. There was a validation of that idea, and that's when I ran into my investor, my angel investor. So I had my dog on the back, Shake, and his lead fell out the back of the eco caddy. I had to park the trike, ran back into the intersection where it fell, grabbed it, and when I came back, there was 2 people standing there patting my dog, and one of them turned out to be my angel investor. So, and that was 3 months later. Yeah, quite literally. Yeah. So 3 months of talking and having coffees, and I was really interested in this person because they had all this business experience that I didn't have. So I was trying to be like a sponge and absorbing that off of them. And then when my pitch didn't go well with the government, they actually revealed themselves to have the capacity to invest, to give me the seed funding, to buy the trikes, to start the fleet. And I wanted 50 of these rolling around, providing a free service for Adelaide. But thank goodness that we started with 7 because there's a lot of moving parts in any company, but certainly in a logistics company, there's even more. So, yeah.
Thank you for that.
No worries.
And Janine. Janine probably needs little introduction, but I would absolutely love to hear, in your own words, how Boost Juice came to be and what your vision of it was, is what you thought you created, what you actually ended up creating.
Yeah, well, on this panel, I feel like a very underachiever because by the time, while they had got their whole business working, I was still cruising around, travelling with a backpack on my back. So, so imagine what these are going to be when they're my age, seriously. Look, the vision was really, most great ideas start with the line of, wouldn't it be good if? And mine would be, Paul's would be, Paul, I'm so in awe. I'm in awe of you too, right? But Paul's stuff is, I don't know anyone who can look at a human woman's body and create products that look absolutely most extraordinary on it. I actually find his work breathtaking. But anyway, so I'm very pleased to meet you.
Thank you.
But you go back to, wouldn't it be good if? Wouldn't it be good if you could go out and actually have something that's genuinely healthy and get as many fruit and vegetables into you? So that's how it started. And I had zero business experience, as the people who have been in this room that just heard my talk, right? None. So I had to learn, like these guys, every single day you wake up, you had to learn something new, or you had to find someone to tell you, or try and work it out. So it started with that, and yeah, it's been an absolute ride of ups and downs and highs and lows and wins like this. What these guys will find, as we all know, is that it's like the moon goes into the wrong orbit and every phone call is a negative phone call. And you feel like you just go to bed because the next day will be fine. And then the next day happens, the moon goes into another place and then everything's good news. So businesses is like that. Parenting's like that. Some days I don't want to be a parent. Some days I don't want to be a business person. Some days you're croc in the corner. But it's the journey that makes it exciting.
That's fascinating because I was thinking about this. I actually rang my husband recently and said, look, I'm going to have to quit being a parent. I'm really not that good. And before my performance review comes back, how bad I am, I'm going to quit. But apparently the performance review was okay and my kids are going to keep me. So this notion of some days, it's just not going to line up. So when you've got a challenge and you feel like, will there ever not be a day where I'm feeling daunted? What are some of the steps that you would take to overcome that feeling, get around that problem, and achieve a new level of success that you hadn't felt you had before?
You've got to remember that you're thinking we have options.
Yeah.
Right? We haven't. Do you play Texas Hold'em? We are all in, right? There is no option to fail. Right, I had more debt than I could pay off in 5 lifetimes. I had to work it out, so there wasn't an option of failing. You had to just sort of get up and dust yourself off and have a pity party. That didn't work out, you move on, get over it. So if you never gave yourself a chance to fail, all you then are doing is you're finding opportunities to solve that particular problem that you have at that time. So, there's no difference to any of us three on the panel. We've all had our various things, and every day you wake up and there's a challenge. And there's a disaster that happens, you go, right, that's pretty bad. Right, now I'm going to fix that. There's a wedding dress wrong size, that she's next Tuesday. There's a solution. There is always a solution. And you've just got to keep at it. Einstein says he's not the smartest man in the room. He just sticks with problems longer.
Yeah.
I think that's what, in business, you just have to stick with the problem until you solve it.
Yeah.
And is that what you're finding in both your businesses? Because Janine's has been around a little bit longer. And
Oh,
is that
long
what
time, thanks for that.
I want to be nice. Is that what you're finding?
Well, yeah, no, it's just, it's funny hearing, it's good validation to
Yeah.
know that it happens for other people too.
Yeah.
And I think, well, the thing that I kind of like to think is that when something does go wrong or doesn't work out, it was meant to be. And I find like maybe months or even years later that it didn't happen for a reason because now something even better has come from it.
We were talking about risk and failure in the green room before coming out. If you don't give yourself permission to fail, you won't take a risk.
Yep.
And so I think that would be critical for all your stories.
Yeah, just going on Paul's point is you actually learn more for what goes wrong than what goes right. And in business, what you find is when things go wrong, it costs money, right?
Yep.
And so how I justified that in my head was, when I make mistakes, because you make lots of them, is I did a course.
Yeah.
And I did a course on hiring people. I did a course on equipment, and so that course cost me money. Sometimes that cost a lot of money. but the thing is, though, in actual fact, there's times when you actually, again, to Paul's point, you actually look back upon an issue where you think it's the worst in the world, and then you actually you're thankful for that problem. It's like when you say to me, tell me all the things that went wrong and how you solved them. Well, I can't even think of any, because everything that went wrong makes you who you are and makes your business who you are. So everything that went wrong is kind of right anyway.
Yeah.
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 I think it's asking yourself why it went wrong, and I suppose learning from that lesson. There's a funny little story that there's these old Italian guys down the corner from where our workshop is in the city, and they would never ever give me any recognition. I'd walk past their place every single day, and this happened for 6-9 months. And I think I had this really bad day. Nothing was going wrong. Like the moon was not even in orbit. And this guy looked at me, and I don't know if he saw something in me at that day, but he looked at me and he goes, "How you going?" I'm like, "Yeah, not bad." And he's like, "Keep on going, mate." And then I kept on talking to him, and he goes, "Look, I've been on the street for 40 years. I've seen businesses come and go, and I just rid you off as one of those other businesses, but you're still here. And that's a testament to your perseverance, to just keep your head up, kid, and just keep going." And I think, you hit these milestones. Now that we've only been around for 3 years, but we're making, I think, less mistakes in the spaces that we were making mistakes last year. You're improving. There's always going to be new hurdles. There's always going to be mistakes made. And if you're not making mistakes, you're probably not pushing hard enough. So that's another little indicator or metric, as you might want to call it. So yeah, I think it's coming to grips with that it's always going to happen, and just learning that it's going to be another day tomorrow, and just pick yourself up, and yeah, try and work out what you could have learned from that era.
Do you find that as well, Paul, when you're not only in the design part but the business part?
Yeah. I mean, I love the course thing because that is so true. I always, when something goes wrong and it costs you money, it's like you learnt a lesson, a valuable lesson. The thing is, you don't want to learn that lesson twice. That's my rule, is that we don't want to be making the same mistakes twice. So you hope you don't do that.
Yeah, excellent point. So we were also talking a little bit about fear in the green room, because I'm imagining some days you're filled with fear. Would that be true? Or do you just kind of push that feeling down and think, no, today is a day where I'm going to be successful. Today is a day where I'm going to shine.
For me personally, I feel a lot of fear all the time, particularly with what we do, because when you're having to release a collection, that's a lot of yourself that you're putting out there. And I have been physically ill because of that. So in the lead up to a launch, because you just think, am I bankrupting our company? Because my staff, they've done a good job because they're great craftsmen and craftswomen, and they're very talented, and so the quality of the work is there, but is the design there, and that's squarely on me. So if the designs are bad and they don't sell, it's really my fault. So that's a huge amount of pressure to
in
have.
a creative industry, that's absolutely true. It is a personal expression, which is very different to perhaps an eco-caddy, which is a design problem solution.
Yeah. So I mean, we're getting into the design aspects now. We're with the vehicle and the software, and we're hitting a lot of new problems, and what we're realising is that there is no solution out there, so we've got to build it ourselves. So that's daunting in itself. And I think I consider myself a generalist, and I'm trying to surround myself with smarter people and make myself, you know, obsolete in these things. Like, I was the mechanic I was the first mechanic of EcoCaddy, and I was spending 60 hours a week just under the vehicles trying to fix them, because I was the only one qualified in the Southern Hemisphere to work on these particular trikes. So that's not a good place to be if you're trying to build a business. So it's things like that, and knowing that there's always going to be a new problem, and that's my fear, but now I'm sort of overcoming that, knowing that there's actually other people around that can help to solve that, and building a really good team which you can rely on. And not have to just rely on yourself. So I was a sole founder, which I think is a little bit of a danger sometimes. I don't know, Janine, maybe. If you have other founders around, you can sort of lean on them, and they have other skill sets. But yeah, now I've got other people around me that I can, you know, you work as a team. So you sort of, you know, you give each other backing. And I do it for the team as well, not just for myself or for EcoCaddy.
And Janine, do you find yourself looking to around you?
Look, you know, I was only fearful for 10 years, really. But fear can be a huge positive. You know, I absolutely, like these guys, you know, certainly in the early days when I really didn't know what I was doing, I was sort of winging it. And when you do sell your family home, and when you're all in, you are fearful. But I think fearful makes you sharp. You know, you go fight and flight. And so I think what you find with, say for example, say you go, you know, Paul's going, you know, the design has to be absolutely perfect. Well, if he wasn't a little bit scared, he wouldn't try so hard. You know, for me, if I panic if one customer's not happy. So every customer has to be a raving fan, or I get twisted about it. Or, you know, the systems have to be right. So if I'm not fearful that everyone's doing what they need to do to make sure that the product is safe or the systems are safe, if I'm not a bit scared, I won't try, I'll be too relaxed.
Yep.
And so in actual fact, fear, as I said in my talk, you know, I was so fearful that I was such in flight mode all the time, fight mode, that I didn't eat for 4 days. It was really handy though, because it kept me in good shape. Because I was constantly on this adrenaline of, I was at war. And we look at business as war. You know, you've got to find your flanking. How do you attack the competitor? How do you be the best you can be? But fear is awesome to motivate people. And I don't think you'd find anyone who hasn't been successful that they haven't at the start, or even even now occasionally it pops in, that there isn't that motivator, which is fear.
I think it does, as you say, keep the mind absolutely sharp. And so also just picking up on this notion of the good people around you, has that been both a challenge and a reward, knowing that you've had to employ people because you cannot do it all in business, and there has to be that moment of trust where you're trusting someone either for advice or to do the job that you used to do. Have you learnt a lot from that process?
Yeah, you do. I mean, if the people in the talk will know that, you know, my advice for people is make sure they marry well. And, yeah, and not necessarily marry well as a husband, but surrounding yourself by great people is critical, because that can actually be your downfall. And actually not firing people quick enough, fire people quick, right? Is also a downfall, because you can't have, if you want a high performance team, you have to have high performance players. I was a director of the Hawthorn Football Club, right? And you know, one of the things we spoke about every single board meeting was your teams, and who are the top 2, who are the top 5, who are the bottom 5, and who are we getting rid of? And unfortunately, it seems harsh, but to get the greatness that you want, you have to have extraordinary people around you. And so you know, and some people can't grow with you. That's the other thing you'll find as you grow. You have great people with good meaning, but they can't grow with you. So sometimes it's really difficult, that journey of business. But yeah, it's got enormous rewards of satisfaction and creative. You know, it's such a creative space.
So you can define your own success.
Yes.
And do you measure your success, and do you feel like, I don't think you ever pinnacle at Everest and then you go, tick, done. Every day is a new Everest or a new mountain range or a new desert that you've got to cross. Is that how you feel every day in your businesses?
I think what you'll find with all 3 people here, not one of us would have said that we did it for the money. right? I didn't earn anything for a salary for 3 years, and today I'm not the highest paid person in Boost, never have been. We did it because I wanted to create something special, right? It was a passion, and it's the founders that have that passion for what they want to do are the ones that are the real deal and the ones that are successful. So that's what I've found. Creating, you need to create money to be able to keep funding the business, but if it's your main reason, which a lot of private equity businesses or JV people come and do, they think, how hard is it? You'll fail.
Yeah. Yeah. And is that for you the same? I mean, yours is clearly a passion project.
Yeah, and it is hard because it is a business, but then there's obviously the creative aspect that drives it, and a lot of decisions I make, and I say to my team, I'm like, I know this isn't a great business decision, but I'm not doing this to make money. I'm doing it because I love it, and I'm doing it because of passion. And like our recent collection, we collaborated with Disney. And it was something that if I didn't become a fashion designer, I wanted to be an animator at Disney because I love Disney. And I said, one day, even though I've become a fashion designer, I will work with Disney one day. And so I was given the opportunity I made the opportunity, I guess, to collaborate with them. And I said, it might not be a great business decision, or my manager of operations said, this collection, Paul, we can only afford to do maybe 20 pieces at the very most. And we need to scale back the set and stuff. You can't go like over the top and elaborate. And I said, but this is my dream, and this is what I've always dreamt of. So I fought and I won, and we did 34 pieces. And I had my big set with my trees brought in and everything. So, and we're paying for it now, but
you gotta have fun though.
So we just have to sell a few more dresses. But I look at it and I look back at it, and it's something that I'm as proud as I can be of it. I'm never like 100% on anything that we do. There's always that little bit that I go, and I harp on it for quite a while. I'm still harping on it. But there's always bits that I want to change. But it's a good thing because then I know next time what I would do differently and how we can better ourselves in the designs in the company.
Do you ever feel satisfied?
No,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Can I elaborate on that?
Yeah.
I caught up with Roger Gillespie from Baker's Delight, and he said, I'm in a constant state of depression. I said, why? And he said, because nothing's ever good enough. And it's true. I walk up, like if we went for a walk to my Boost stores, you go, wow, that looks great. I'd be going, that's not right, that's not right, that's not right. And I look at Paul's stuff and go, oh my God, it's beautiful. And he goes, yeah, but if you notice that flower to the left is not quite right. Because we know how it has to be, and it's that obsessive compulsiveness that makes people succeed.
It's so true. I worked with an artistic director in a theatre company, and he'd say to me, out of that 100 people, the 100 people who saw the show, one person didn't like it, and that's the only one he wanted to talk about. Not the 100 people who liked it, but the one. So I think this is a theme that comes through. There's that moment of never being satisfied, but wanting to improve, to succeed, to change.
And it does suck. Can I say that I was the only one that didn't get to enjoy my show.
Yeah, that's right.
But but I think it's what drives you forward.
So for you, being entrepreneurs, do you think there are stereotypical understandings of what your jobs are like?
I think there's innate qualities for entrepreneurs, and then I think all the rest is flexible, and you just sort of make it up. But I think there's that drive to create something and have control of it yourself, and control your own destiny, I suppose, and bring people along with you. I've always wanted to do that. I suppose there's different types of entrepreneurs, but yeah, for me, it's being able to create a vision that can be prosperous, not just for me, but for an entire team, and of course for an entire city. So this is just one vehicle of doing it, yeah.
And is that the same for you, Janine?
Yeah, I think what you find with entrepreneurs, they have a very clear vision on what it is. That's the first thing, and it's like, they know the DNA of their business, and they're all a bit odd, right? So they're all a bit, they're a bit, it's true, isn't it?
Yeah,
right?
it's true.
Right? And so it's all that sort of a little bit obsessive, like a lot obsessive, and it's that, and the obsession actually drives their passion, which drives their love, which means when they drive their work hours, it's not work. Mm-hmm. So I was there at, those 10 years of working till 2 o'clock every morning, not because it was a chore for me. It was I loved it. And I just wanted to keep doing it and learning it and being the best I could be at it. And I think what you find with entrepreneurs, it's that obsessiveness that actually makes them different. But it's it's a sacrifice they're prepared to give too. But yet they don't see the sacrifice as a sacrifice because they love what they do over here.
Yep. Those key words of passion and love keep coming up in everything that you do and wanting to make a difference or create something special. So apart from those innate qualities, are there skills, is there experiences, are there courses, are there things that you feel that you should do or would want to do, or is it all learn it on the job? Good question.
I'm going to say on the job. I don't want to answer that one.
I mean, I had some skills which I obviously learned at university, and being able to read and write helps. That does help, depending on what you're doing. You could be a creative designer and you don't need to read and write. I wish that I'd learned how to code at university, for instance. EcoCAD is very quickly becoming a technology company, and that's because I have an interest in technology. I built computers and overclocked them so I could game, so I could build bigger cities on SimCity and all that sort of stuff. And I think you shape your businesses around what you're interested in, what you're passionate in, and then obviously where your skills are, that's what helps to drive it. I think if you're a generalist in a lot of things, you can understand what skills you actually need to bring on to build your business. And I think it can save you a lot of money as well. Understanding, what lawyers do, what accountants do, their lingo, their language, how much they should, how expensive they're going to be, all those sorts of things. Same with programmers. I think that's all really handy to have as a skill set. And but then you want to be understanding what you're good at and what you're bad at, and making sure that you make yourself redundant in the stuff that other people can do better jobs at, because that makes your business more efficient, more cost effective, and then you get to do what you love in the business. Because, I mean, business is such a broad thing, and there's so many things that happen in businesses, and every business is different. But you started a business for a particular reason because you're passionate about this one or a multitude of things within that. So you want to ensure that you can continue to do that and that you don't kill the passion, doing all the stuff that you don't like in the business.
Yeah, I didn't want to be reliant on anyone though, because I found that in business, because you're quite often, if you are so far one way creative, you normally have deficiencies in other areas, and particularly if you're super creative. So what I found I had zero business, I didn't even know between debit and credit. But what I did know was every dollar spent, I wanted to be valuable. So I sat in front of lawyers and I used to go, you're kidding me, you're $500 an hour for what? So what I did was I thought, okay, next time I want to do it less. So I would sit down, I would read contracts, I would circle things, and found out when you read them, they make a lot of mistakes. And I would actually, if I didn't understand something, so I used those times to actually then teach me. So can you explain what that, let's talk about these clauses of indemnities and warranties and what do they mean. And so I made sure that with the theory that the next time I had to hire a lawyer, I could do less time because I'd be more efficient. And sometimes quite often what happens is when things go wrong in your business, you learn more from it. Like I had I learned that I shouldn't hire a blonde person who drives a blue sports car as a CFO. You need a nerd that drives a Ford to be your CFO, right? And so consequently, I suddenly was left with all these accounts and it was a mess. So I then got to pull my whole business apart and put it together in a financial way and learned enormous about my business, which actually put me in good stead for the rest of my life with business. So, but I started with, my experience was nanny in France, door bitch at a nightclub, and running cinemas. I wasn't qualified for anything. I left school at 16, so it was all learn on the job. I had a business course. It was called Boost.
Yeah, that's what I love. I'm a producer in the arts, and I've done a degree, but it has been 25 years as an apprentice to my job. Everything you learn on the job, but the key things that I'm picking up from each of you is you learn the business that you're doing and that you're running.
Each and every day. Yeah,
and that you aren't reliant on someone else, you're owning the information, which I think is an incredibly valuable thing. It's fascinating about the car, the driver and the blonde. That'd be a lesson to all of us. I'm conscious of time, and I'd like to invite members of the audience now to ask questions from our panellists. There may be other things that they want to hear about, you know, other kinds of people that they should be hiring. So the lights are really bright, so stick your hand right up. Lady here, lady there, gentleman there, and then down the front. Do you want to just yell?
Yes, okay, if I can. Hi, Amanda. Just in terms of promoting yourselves, maybe one answer from each of you. What have you found the most profitable in a sense? Networking, social media, or paid advertising?
Did you all hear the question?
Yeah. Is this our businesses or us personally?
Yeah, your business.
Yeah. We started, EcoCaddy started a core group. So I reached out to this is when we were hiring, network of friends, and then hired friends of friends, never hired friends. I knew that rule, or family. And at times I was like, I know people, good friends that I'd love to bring into the business, but I just didn't. But yeah, social media. So once we had that core group of people, I said, I want you guys to reach out through your network, your social network, so we can find more people. And we built a team of 16 writers, and then we pushed all the promotion through them. And that's how we reached out to Adelaide, essentially. And what we found was it worked out really well because those people were actually interested in a brand, which is quite niche, EcoCaddy, you know, bamboo-bodied rickshaw transport service. Not too many people around. There's a social filtering that occurs, and there's going to be a certain type of early adopter that's into that. So that allowed us to build our early adopters, which was cool. Yeah.
Awesome. Look, I was a publicist, so I understood the power of the media. Like, you know, you get a top movie star in one of Paul's dresses, suddenly everyone wants that dress. So it's incredibly important that, you know, all of us would have had zero money to promote our products. So you have to try harder, you have to think outside the square. So what did I have differently 16 years ago? I was a woman in business. So you use every skill you have to get the Boost name out there and for them to understand what it is. And so I was a voice of the brand so people could understand it. So really it's whatever it takes.
Yeah, and like, I mean, when I started out, I didn't have money to pay a media coordinator or a publicist or anyone, so I had to be my own. So I was writing my own press releases, and you know, I was calling up the networks because I knew Logies were on or whatever red carpets were around, and I was wanting to get my dresses out there. And fortunately for us, Instagram and social media kind of started when I started my business. So when I started, I thought it is going to be impossible here in Adelaide because I'm only going to be able to reach Adelaide. But thankfully, because of social media, we were able to grow. Now we're close to 500,000 followers on Instagram.
And you can know exactly the transaction route.
Exactly,
so
and we know where our followers are from, and we know, you know, where our target market is and their age and everything. So it's fantastic.
And you can also understand the purchase power of your followers. Yeah, so hopefully that, yeah, just behind.
Hi. Paul, you mentioned that your mum found you a mentor, and Daniels, you kind of had an unofficial mentor in your sister's flatmate, by the sound of it. Janine, did you have a mentor of any kind? And if so, how did you access that mentor and what kind of leverage did that give you?
Yeah, I had 3 little kids at home. And I had my head down, bum up. I didn't even know what the word mentor was until 5 years into the business when I got involved with the Telstra Business Women's Awards and started doing that. But I was a type that went, I'd go, right, that person there, I could learn something from that person. So I would ring that person up randomly and ask them for a coffee. And I would take a pad and pen to every meeting and I would just write and write and write and just suck them dry of all the knowledge I possibly could get, and then I would use it. But I think the greatest respect you can give someone is giving them advice and you doing something about it. And I think, or recommending a book and they read it, because there's obviously a reason you're recommending a book. So I think that is actually where the greatest respect is. And to be honest, 1 in 10 will go that extra mile to actually really take that care factor. But you'll find that's the other trait of an entrepreneur is that knowledge for learning how to do it better every day. We actually all look at ourselves as completely flawed and completely we've got so much to learn. The more you know you don't know. So, and I think that's the other thing with an entrepreneur, they just go, okay, we still need to know more. So that's annoying.
I'd just like to ask a question about essentially raising capital. So aside from selling a stake in your company as like angel investment, are there any methods that you guys have used, such as giving away sales rights or supplying rights to gather capital or anything for your companies?
The growing capital is one of the biggest things. Young businesses are always screaming for cash, right? That's one thing you're guaranteed is you'll run out of cash. Sometimes equity is the only way of doing it in the early days, and you've got to respect that. What tends to happen with investors is that you ask investors for money, and you need that money to grow, and without their money you can't grow. They invest, you give them 20% of the business, and then you begrudge them later that they're not putting enough in. But in actual fact, you've got to remember that without their money in the first place, you wouldn't have got anywhere as well. So you've got it, there's sort of a level of understanding with investors. There's ways of doing it, like, you can actually put a mortgage on your home. You've got to back yourself in. So, banks will lend you money if they're prepared to have some sort of equity connected to it. But unless you're prepared to really either have some sort of equity, some sort of asset that you can put you onto, or selling equity. I mean, why would someone give you the money and you go, oh, well, let's risk all your money, but there's no upside for you? Like, oh, mate, I'm on Shark Tank. Seriously.
Yeah, I was extremely fortunate in that my angel investor didn't ask for any equity, so I'm still 100% owner, which is great. And then I thought, I want to grow this thing and I want to grow it quick. So we were going to start raising for a Series A, but we stopped because this company, we're only just reaching profitability. So what I really want is, we're building this crank and I want to crank it up. There's no point in throwing capital at something that, isn't making as much money as it could, or can't be as big as it could be. So we stepped back, and I think a lot of people jump in to saying we need more capital, but really that's probably just going to cause more problems. So I think this day and age, in particular, you don't need a lot of money to start, the companies that are going to be running the world in the next, 10, 20 years, and that's the last 10 years has already proven that. A lot of this stuff can be designed on a laptop on a couch, which is cool. So, so I think rethinking capital and what it can actually do and when it should actually be implemented and when you should go for it is something that a lot of people should ask themselves. Yeah.
Paul?
Well, we're still 100% owned. Well, I still own 100% of the business, and we've just been running off of working capital for the past 10 years. So, but I mean, there will come a time where we're going to need more to be able to do, the shoe line or whatever it is that I decide I want to do. But yeah, it's a hard decision to make because it's something that you've started from nothing, and I guess the issue that I have with it is the thought of giving and I totally understand why you do it, but yeah, it's just that issue that I kind of battle with. But it is something that we're going to have to look at doing in the near future because we can't be a Chanel, a Dior, a Valentino off of working capital. It's just not going to work.
The positives that can come from it, and this is what I found in the early days, because I owned 100%, I sold the thing. I found that by bringing investors in, it created a discipline in the business that the businesses needed. Mm-hmm. Because what you find is if you're doing it for yourself, you kind of go, oh, I'll do my P&L in another, I don't have to answer to anyone, so I kind of, so you become, I found, this is, my person, I don't know what you guys do, but I found that I liked the fact that there was a discipline that I had to not report to someone, mm-hmm. but on a financial basis, I had to get my reports done, because what you found is that if you don't do your reports and financials on a regular basis, you don't even know your mistakes and then it's too late. You've stuffed it up and you've still got months and months of mistakes you've got to fix up. So I found that but the key thing is don't just go for the cash. Go for people that can contribute, can open a door, can add something more than cash. Because you're right, cash is you can get cash from anywhere. But I think the other thing is that you'll find is with all of us is that Daniel slept on someone's couch. because every cent that he got into the business had to go back into the business. So it's those sacrifices that you do. People think this entrepreneurial world is easy and then suddenly you're driving a Tesla.
Some cases you probably are, but yeah.
Yeah, well, there's a few cases.
Yeah, there's a few
there is a
cases.
few cases.
The exceptions.
Yeah. But most times, that's not the case.
So that notion of self-investing and also getting capital to change the trajectory of the business.
Not dumb money though.
Yeah, that's clear.
And the other thing is partnerships are like marriage. Like if you get it wrong, it's revolting. So you've got to make sure that, that all my investors I've ever got into them, we probably took a 3-month to 4-month process of getting to know each other before we got into bed together, because it's as hard as a marriage to get out of.
Yeah.
And it's expensive.
Gentleman down the front.
I really love the passion and drive, so great. I hear also here and there, like you guys alluding to, humbling experiences and where you actually somehow something lifted your spirits at the crucial time. I'm really interested in that sort of tipping point. If there was any valuable lesson, almost a make or break it for either one of you, what would have it been? One lesson.
Do you want to talk? No.
You go first.
Well, they happen all the time, actually. It happened just recently where I took my girlfriend's 94-year-old grandmother, on the back of an eco caddy, and she hadn't come to the city for 6 years, and she hadn't seen most of the city in 6 years. And we provided something that we thought was pretty simple, but isn't for her, which is mobility to get around and the freedom of that mobility. And then that's the humbling moment and the aha moment that, hey, maybe we should get into aged care mobility. So that's what we're working on now. So there's all these, I suppose, little moments that you have. The other is, little points of validation when people see it and they go, that's beautiful, I want to jump on it, and then it's as simple as a smile. They're in the back enjoying themselves. It's like, how do we continue to do that? How do we continue to keep people smiling, and keep them happy? Happy customers, right? It's the hardest thing. It's the easiest thing to say, but it's the hardest thing to achieve. So that's what we try and do. And using technology and systems and education so that we can get better, so we can do that more consistently. It's as simple as that, yeah.
I think for me personally, again, it's the same thing. It's having, getting to work with brides, for example, that moment when they put on their dress for the first time, it's like magic, and you feel like the best person in the world because you've been able to do that for them. So, and each and every day there is something about my day that I think I'm just so lucky to be doing what I'm doing and working with the team that I've built. It's a family. We're putting the Christmas tree up at work next week, and I can't wait because I love my team so much. They're my family, and I did break the rule, and I've hired a few of my friends, and, which I have to say for me, it thankfully was the best decision that I've ever made, and it makes every day so much fun. And my family help out. Like my dad builds the sets for the show. My mum took 3 weeks off of work to come help before the last collection. So having her there and my brother around helping with the music, like getting to succeed with the important people in my life is a wonderful feeling. So I can't say that there's ever been any moments of thinking, why do I do this, or I'm going to throw in the towel. There's never been that, I have to say, thankfully, touch wood. Because there's something, honestly, every day that I think I'm the luckiest person in the world to be doing something that I love so much.
How fabulous to go to work and think I'm the luckiest person in the world. What a great feeling. Don't get any of the team wrong here. Every day presents challenges and it's hard work.
The hard stuff too.
We'll talk about that later. Yeah, from the nitty gritty, yeah. No.
Yeah. I'm very conscious of time. One more question. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Marianne. I'm really excited that Daniels and Paul, you've come back to Adelaide and decided to make Adelaide your base. Daniels, what is your vision in the future with your product in Adelaide?
Yep.
And Paul, you also, can you tell us the advantages, how you feel about being in Adelaide as a base for your business?
Yeah, well, I think it goes back to when I came back and I saw my friends digging in And I asked them why are they doing it, and they said, because it's bloody hard on the East Coast and it's really expensive, and I just want a home-cooked meal, you know? So it's having that support system around. There's affordability and livability, you know, we can talk about that. I think we all know how good Adelaide is in this room. For EcoCaddy as a business, we want to be a global business, of course. The idea is to get the concept back to China, where this vehicle is actually prohibited, because it's still, the government at least, still thinks that cars are the future. And I think they are in certain instances, but certainly not when you're talking about dense environments like cities. I think they should be walkable cities, places for people, and vehicles like this, which are sympathetic to those sorts of environments. But so we're now looking to move into Melbourne, so we'll be there next month for the entire month, and Brisbane, so the East Coast. So the idea is to make the model work in a very conservative environment, Adelaide and Australia being the two, and the hardest logistically because of the density that we have in our cities. And then it should, we should have a pretty scalable model to move into Southeast Asia. And I'd like to get back to my roots, back to Africa, where my mother's from, and they've got some serious transport problems there as well, so that's the idea. Yeah.
Well, for me, growing up, as I mentioned earlier, there was little to no fashion industry here, and garment manufacturing is something that we're losing a lot of to overseas, and I was very conscious of that, and it saddened me because I thought I don't want to have to take my product elsewhere or make my product elsewhere, because I want to be there and be hands-on with it. And so from day one I said, you know, if I'm going to do this, I want to maintain manufacturing here in South Australia, and I'm so glad that we're able to do that. And you know, we're now a staff of 18, and we still hand make everything here in South Australia. And so we export to several countries internationally, you know, throughout the Middle East, Singapore, the US, Europe, and it's all handmade here. So eventually I'd love to continue to grow that. Hopefully we are successful and we become Australia's first haute couture brand. And you know, having a base here and then also a base in Paris that we can move in between the two. Yeah, and I think it's exciting for the state, because instead of our young people having to go overseas, you know, people that are studying fashion design having to go overseas to other brands to work, they can stay here and they've got a job. So, yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, please thank our panellists, Paul, Daniels and Janine.